Hey there, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video. If you enjoy it and you want to see some more of this, please hit the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up if you're enjoying it. I hope that everyone's having a great day today. My day's going much better than yesterday. I started off yesterday by boiling water to put in my clogged bathtub drain, after the Drano. And then I dropped my phone into a whole pot of boiling water. And surprisingly, it still worked after that, except for the speakers. So my day yesterday went downhill from there. But we're coming back strong today. And I want to go ahead and talk to you guys about 90 Day Fiance, The Other Way, Season 5, Episode 8, Mistrust, She Wrote. So we'll go ahead and start off with Holly and Wayne. We begin the episode with, Holly running out of the safety of the gate. This guy, Wayne, he's still in his office crying. He says that he knows that she's given up a lot for him and that she's given up a lot more for him than he has for her. But she just has no idea what kind of pressure he's under. And I do feel bad for him because he finally told her the truth and she kind of just took off. And I think some guys have this macho idea of what a man should be. So they can hold a lot of things in until it blows up in their faces and they have to tell the truth. And then the way that their partner reacts is the reason they don't say things. So they become afraid of this reaction. It's a vicious cycle. My advice is to just tell people stuff in the beginning or right away so this doesn't happen. He says that it hurts him when she just carries on about it and he had just made a mistake. And I don't think she was carrying on about it. They just had the conversation and it was her first time hearing it. I think going on and on about it would be 2 weeks later, a few days later. That's all she's been talking about. Anyway, meanwhile, she's out there. She's telling production that she feels betrayed. She feels like in every decision she has made, Wayne was a huge influence on that. She keeps him in mind, and it's just something she naturally does. She says they're supposed to go on a honeymoon and it's fine that they aren't, but he wasn't honest about it. That's her problem. Wayne gets up. He's heading out of the office. I'm sure he doesn't want everyone to see him cry. Plus, he's probably embarrassed. And she's still talking out there. She's saying she's shocked. And if she thought she was shocked in there, this man gets in his car and drives away. And she's still talking, none of that makes sense to me. I'm not the sharpest person, but... And then there goes Wayne zooming by. She's like, he just bolted? And she's like, I don't know what to do. And then she starts walking barefooted through all, the debris on the street. And I'm like, she better be careful. She's going to get stabbed with something. Don't be walking barefoot anywhere. In any country. She says they're getting married in a week. And she doesn't know if she wants to marry someone when they leave their fiance stuck in the middle of nowhere. He knows that she doesn't know her way around. And then she finally comes to her senses and she says, oh, I should put some shoes on. I might get stabbed with a needle or something. Oh, you don't say. And then she kind of says pretty much what I was thinking in her interview. He's so concerned about her safety, but then he just left her in the gutter on the side of the road. I mean, I wasn't thinking that extreme, but I was thinking wow, he's real worried about her safety. But that's probably what it felt like for her. And he didn't even go get her or anything, so she's pretty shocked. Especially because she's outside of the gate and, people are going to think she's a prostitute by what she's wearing or something. You never know. So she starts asking production if she pressed too hard or what happened because she doesn't know how it escalated. I just want to point out that she's asking the people who film Angela, Ed, Kimberly, if she pushed too hard. Like, she didn't throw a milkshake in his face. She didn't rip apart a car. I guess that's an overreaction, not pushing too hard. But you get what I'm saying. These people are not the best gauge of that. Later we see them. It's 30 minutes later. Wayne finally makes his way back. And I'm like, oh no, you guys, because she ran up to him like a freaking damsel in distress. Like she did after she cried at the dress stop, and she just fell in his arms like a puddle. Like, are you kidding me? So, Wayne says he had to leave because his emotions are everywhere, and he's concerned about business, and he's also concerned about Holly. And because he's so concerned about her, he left her there on the side of the road. He's also worried if she wants to be with him. And, you know, he's thinking to himself, what has he done? And then she's like, thank you for coming back. Like, excuse me, he left without a word, and you're like groveling. Ugh. That's how I feel about that. Ugh. It makes me sick. So he's like, yeah, I just needed to calm down, that's all. She asks him if he just doesn't care anymore, and he's like, look, I'm not having a good day. And she's like, oh, so you're done with me for today? And I'm like, listen, you need to be quiet. Like, if you're not going to get mad about the fact that he left you there for 30 minutes alone, barefooted, in a place that's as dangerous as Thebes in the Disney movie Hercules, you know, you don't have nothing to say right now. You're just groveling. He does tell us that when he was dating Holly, she told him that she would never be with someone who was financially struggling. So because of that, he didn't want to tell her and have her not be with him. So now she's just living in the dark, you know, which is terrible. Did she mention that? I feel like I heard her say that when we first met her, but I can't remember for sure. So if you guys remember, just let me know. She tells him that she feels helpless and it's hard to feel that way. He's like, I don't need your help. I'm fine. She's like, I wasn't talking about you, you know, like she wasn't talking about him. She didn't tell him that. That was me. Like, he doesn't want her help. She's like, she said she feels helpless. And then she tells him, you know, that's not part of a partnership. And he's like, I'm going to get over it by myself. She doesn't want him to do that. He says, you know, he's been there for himself his whole life. And she just starts to get upset. She tells him, like, she's here for him, and why doesn't he just let her in and be a part of his life? He wants her a part of his life, just not a part of his business. She doesn't want to be a part of his business. She wants to be his wife. And I think he missed the fact that, like, she just wanted to know what their financial situation is, because she's trying to plan a safer place to live for herself and things like this. And she wants to know what she's working with. She doesn't care what he does daily at the business. I mean, unless it's miserably failing, and then she might try to chime in. But that's a wife's job, isn't it? I don't know. I've never been in that position. So Holly has like an epiphany, and suddenly she can see that he isn't upset. You know, he's not cold. He's just emotional, and he doesn't know how to express that. But she just doesn't want to be in a relationship with secrets. I mean, like, does anybody? So she says they need to talk about this before they get married. He asked her to give him 2 minutes, and she's like, alone? And he's like, well, you can sit there if you want. Like, give this man 2 minutes alone. You both need 2 minutes, okay? It's been a rough day. I gotta warn you guys, I don't know that I have anything that nice to say about anybody on this episode. Like, they all kind of I had issues, except for Brandan, but we'll get there. I mean, he had issues, but I'm saying, like, I don't have nothing bad to say about him, but none of these couples, like, did it for me, like, made me feel all warm and fuzzy. I don't know if I'm just in a bad mood, or if they're just that annoying and like frustrating. So let me know. On that note, I'm just going to go ahead and dive into Brandan and Mary. They are still mid-fight from the last time. We pick back up with Brandan telling Mary like he doesn't feel good enough for her, even in person. And then she starts having a panic attack. She's crying. She's hyperventilating. She can't breathe. Brandan asks for an inhaler because she has asthma, which, I mean, she wasn't having an asthma attack, but maybe the inhaler would help. I don't have asthma, so I don't know. But I've had panic attacks, and I don't know that that would help. Anyway, that's all he can think of to do. He's telling her to stop. She's saying she can't breathe. He's trying to calm her a little bit. And then the medic shows up. Brandan takes a walk off to the side because they're just trying to get Mary to breathe. And while the lady's telling her to take deep breaths. Now, I've had like panic attacks where people have done this to me to breathe, and you have to like be looking. You don't have to, but it helps to be looking at them to focus on something. She is like straight up just looking at like Brandan and what he's doing and why he's off to the side. That's what it seemed like to me. Like she was just looking over at him. She wasn't paying attention to the lady trying to help her. Then he kind of gets pulled to the side for his first ever solo interview, I think. And he tells us he feels bad. He feels like he could have tried to confront her about this more gently. And I'm like, that was pretty gentle. Like, I don't think you could have said it any nicer. He's always very, like, handling her with, was it kid gloves, gentle gloves, whatever the expression is. But he's standing by that, you know, he's standing by her telling him not to look at girls at church is just bullshit, basically was what he said. He cannot be limited in what he can do. And he was okay with this when he was in America, but they made a promise that they won't do that anymore. And it hurts him because when he met her, he was at a point in life where he was done with everything. His ex cheated on him. His mom was using. He didn't feel like he was good enough for anybody, even himself. His life was basically a whole ass country song, right? And all jokes aside, at this point in his life, it brought him to trying to like end it for himself and, you know, like succumb to the depression and let it win. Now poor Brandan is crying, and he says, you know, when Mary reached out for the first time, it was literally a life changer for him. He clung on to her hard, and he loves her. So basically they are like trauma bonded, these two. And, you know, that's why it hurts so much when he feels like he doesn't have her trust, because it brings back the state of mind that he isn't good enough. And he's just really trying to hold on. He's really crying. He's really crying. His face is red. And he's saying all this, and you can just feel and see his pain. And I just realized that I said trauma bonded, and not everyone might know what that means. So I'm going to go ahead and get the definition right. Just give me 1 second. It means trauma bonding occurs when a person experiencing abuse develops an unhealthy attachment to their abuser. They may rationalize or defend the abusive actions, feel a sense of loyalty, isolate from others, and hope that the abuser's actions will change. So they're basically the definition of that. I just wanted everyone to know exactly what I was talking about. So, I honestly think Brandan's a really good guy. He didn't say anything rude about the house or the bugs or the bucket shower. He did the right thing by the grandparents, even when Mary wanted to lie. He wasn't about that. He's honest, you know, not just to her and to everyone. He puts his emotions aside all the time to take care of hers. So, I mean, I don't see too much issue with his behavior. He even, like, decided to make friends with her friends. He was very honest with them in the discussion. And he has just, I feel like, spent his life doing the best with the very hard cards that he's been dealt. And I can really relate to that, and I can really relate to him in this scene. So going back to the show, Mary's over there. She's calmed down now. She says she can't stop herself from overthinking. And, like, this is beyond overthinking at this point. She's just afraid he will leave her even though she loves him so much. Brandan makes his way back to her and asks if she's okay. And then he apologizes. This is the second time in a row the wrong person started off apologizing. He tells her he loves her and he trusts her. And I'm not sure why he trusts her after her lying all those times about the Wi-Fi. But, you know, whatever. And he asks her, you know, if she knows that. And if she has anything that she wants to say. He tells us he wants her to say that she genuinely trusts him. So they can be together and get married. She just says, like, sorry. And he tells her, don't be. He tells us that sorry isn't the answer. He feels bad that Mary worked herself up into a panic attack. And she feels bad, but she doesn't trust him, and he needs to hear that. But, you know, they decide to call it a day and head home. He's telling us about, like, all he gave up to be with her, and he doesn't want them to fight. When he got there in person, he was able to trust her with her guy friends. And if she can't do the same, like, where is this going? What does his future look like? It's just giving him doubts. When we see them again, they greet Mary's Lolo. Him and, like, two of his homies are out there working, doing something with dirt. Mary and Brandan are off on a walk. She tells us that when she had an anxiety attack last night, she felt ashamed. She went home, she cried, she slept. She just still feels like everyone will leave her no matter what she does. But she does acknowledge that Brandan doesn't leave her. Turns out that the walk was going to her old high school. Brandan, he's admiring the space, the trees, the plants at the school. Mary's telling us, you know, today she feels better. As long as she feels better, right? Everything's great. She says that her high school memories are the best of her life. She met her friends there. You know, she showed off her talents. So she wants to show Brandan. You know, high school was not that long for her. It was like 5 years ago, maybe. She'll have better times in life, but it's nice that she wants to show him that. She shows him, like, the old tree where all the cool kids hang out at the church. Oh, the tree where the kids hang out, and then she shows him the church. It's a Catholic school, so that's why they have a church. And Brandan's like, cool story. But we left things off iffy last night. And he asks, you know, if they're okay. And she says, yeah, they are. And I'm like, what about him? Is he okay? Like, that was the first time we saw this man break down crying. And she's cried, like, every episode over every little inconvenience. So, like, him crying meant a lot, like, put a lot more on my heart than her crying. But, you know, who cares if he's okay, I guess. He's like, you know, it's nice that he wants her to be a part of her childhood memories, but they can't pretend nothing happened, and she hasn't given him the reassurance he needs. He asks again, like, are we really okay? And it's like, Brandan, just tell her, well, I'm not okay. I'm glad that you are, since you had a nice nap or a good sleep. I didn't sleep. Freaking geckos everywhere. So she says yes. He's like, are you sure? She's like, well, I just hope that you understand that it's hard for me to trust you, like, right now, today. He needs to give her time because she has the feeling of no matter what she does, how hard she tries, everyone will leave her. He says he understands because guess what? He's had people leave him too. And he knows you can't just flip a switch and trust somebody. But she says that she's going to try harder to trust him. And he thanks her because he really needed to hear that and he needs her to do that. She tells him, she loves him, he's perfect, he's the man she wants, and she wants a future with him. He starts to get teary-eyed. He tells her, it meant a lot to him. And she's like, well, you mean a lot to me. And she's finally putting some game on him, trying to flirt, trying to be nice. So he says that, he really needed to hear her say that she'll try and trust him because that means everything to him. He has abandonment issues too, right? We know that his mom abandoned him to her addiction, etc. And he doesn't try to control Mary and her eyeballs. Imagine if he told her, don't look at men, and everything else that she said to him at church. People would be in an uproar, and Brandan would be canceled. And it just really hurt my heart to see the pain that both of them feel this episode, because I've felt the way that both of them have felt, and I just know what it feels like to be there. I hope if anyone else feels like that, you reach out to somebody and get some kind of help that you need, because it's not a great place. So maybe they can help each other heal. Well, it feels really weird to be doing this on episode 7, I think. But we got a new person, a new couple. We'll start off with the new girl. Her name is Shakinah. We get the first look at her. She's putting on lip gloss, and it is thick. She is 41. She lives in Los Angeles. And then a bunch of her friends show up. It looks like they're going to a night out. She says that in LA there's always a party or a premiere going on. Her job is to help host and bring attractive people to the event. She says, if you've ever been to an event where the vibe feels right, it's usually because of someone like her. And at this point, I'm just trying really hard not to be a hater right now. And I'm sure we're all thinking the same things. So I'm just going to keep thinking them until I know more about her. She says people are always shocked when she tells them how she was raised. And, she wants them to be shocked. And then we find out that she was raised Amish. And I was shocked. I really thought she was going to say poor or something like that. Something not extraordinary. But she grew up Amish. She grew up in Tennessee. She was the oldest of 6 girls. Her parents weren't born Amish, but they had lots of Amish friends. So they decided that they were going to raise them that way. She says, they all had long hair. They weren't allowed to cut it. There was no makeup allowed. And she used to hide behind the couch and draw marker on her nails and put chalks on her cheeks. She says she was the most rebellious of all of her siblings, and she feels like her being that way caused her parents to leave the Amish lifestyle. And she feels like the Amish was so extreme, so she wanted to go to the opposite extreme. So she purposely has her life different than how she was raised. She moves on from that and tells us that co-hosting events is just her side hustle. She has her own business being an esthetician, and I'm pretty sure that's just someone who does facials. And she's been doing that for 20 years. She says she moved to LA 13 years ago by chance, and the longer she lives there, the more LA she has become. But at her heart, she has the small town girl mentality. So she does have a solid core group of friends. And they have a lot of the same values. And also none of them are originally from LA. She says she talks to them on a daily basis. And she values their opinions. They always say that, and then they don't listen to a damn thing any of the friends say. So we'll see how this goes. They ask her how her and her man are doing. And she's like, he's so good. And, you're going to love him. They're going to love him. He's down to earth and they have an amazing connection. And Mr. Shady back there says, for now. I'm like, this guy has to be her ex or something. He's extra salty. And then he says, that she's been with a lot of assholes. She tells us that she had a series of toxic relationships, and she was starting to think that she would never find someone until she met Sarper. And cue the workout hot bod muscle man photos. He is 43 and he is from Istanbul, Turkey. He's a model, obviously, and a personal trainer. I'm pretty sure that's all they cast on these shows anymore. And he's also the most stunning man that she has ever seen. She says she went with her friend to Turkey last year and tried out the dating app so they could see what Turkish men were like. She's like, people usually say you had me at hello, but he had me at highlighter. Because on the first date, she noticed he was wearing highlighter, and she thought it was really cute that he would do that for his date with her. And after 2 dates with him, she went home. She couldn't stop thinking about him. So she went back 2.5 months later. She spent a week there. And he's just everything that she's ever looked for. He's a sweet, thoughtful man. He's caring. And, they have a top-notch bedroom life. And apparently it's insanely good because she said it at least 3 times. She is also willing to leave her perfect LA lifestyle to move to Turkey to be with him. So that's great. And we get back to her and her friends. And she's saying there's so many things special about him. They ask her how long she's known him. Like, I don't know why they don't already know that. But apparently she's only known him 5 months. And, she knows that isn't very long. But that's another reason to go, to get to know him better. She says they talked about the different options, about being together full time, and they decided that her moving there is the easiest way. Then she says her daughter is in boarding school. And you can't get to know someone on vacations. You have to live with them to get to know him. I about spit out the water I wasn't drinking at the moment. Wow. So her daughter gets shipped off to boarding school, and you get to go live with Turkey's version of Crixus from the show Spartacus. I guess you really did everything to the opposite extreme of your parents. So, they start talking about her horrible track record with men, and her friend is concerned, if you're in a different country, there's no way for her to go help her. Most friends are feeling this way when their friends go to the other country. And her other friend's like, well, at least this guy isn't trying to change you. And the girl who's worried is like, oh, I don't know about that, because he told her that she has to weigh a certain weight. And the other 3 are like, what? He told her she had to change her makeup, her hair color. And that one's like, oh, okay, he is controlling then. She tells us that she has been training to get bigger, gain muscle, And Sarper likes the opposite, and he's telling her she needs to look more lean. And of course, he's a personal trainer, so he knows everything, I am sure. He tells her 128 is the perfect weight for her height. So he looked up on the BMI chart or something. And her friend's like, okay, it starts with weight, and then clothes, and then hair, and then makeup. It's just too much. So let's see how much she values their opinions now. She says that her history with bad relationships has taught her some really valuable lessons. So I guess we're going to find out what she learned this season. But there are a lot of things about him that show her that he's different from her exes. She's known him for 5 months and spent a week with him in person. She says this is a once-in-a-lifetime connection. So if she doesn't take the risk, she may never find it again. Then Mr. Shady from earlier pulls her aside to talk to her a minute. And he's like, I know you have a plan to go to Turkey, and he just wants to talk to her one-on-one before she goes. He tells us that he's known her for 7 years, and she usually goes for guys that are good looking and athletic, but he would consider them losers. He says that this guy looks like a playboy, and he's just not convinced she's making the right decision. He tells her that they've been through a lot in the last 7 years. And, he really wants her to be happy, but he wants her to know what he really thinks of her. He starts stumbling on his words and tells her he still loves her and he thinks they should be together. I knew it as soon as he said that comment like that. She tells us Dan, that's his name, Dan. It's not Mr. Shady. He's the perfect catch, He's successful, he's sweet, he's charming, and she knows he would be a great partner. He tells her, they have a great bond, they have an emotional attachment, and that makes it special, and you don't find that every day. And I like how he describes their connection, how she describes her connection with Sarper, once in a lifetime. She's like, yeah, we have an emotional connection, but it's more of a friendship. And, it doesn't mean they should be together. He's like, well, you know how well I can treat you. She says, they already tried to date, but it didn't feel right for her. He tells her he isn't hoping this relationship doesn't work out, but he hopes it opens her mind in a different way towards him. She says, I'm in love with Sarper. I can't even think of that right now. She tells him she respects what he's saying and she understands how he feels and he'll always be a big part of her life, and she thanks him for always being there for her. She gives him like a pity hug and she's like, oh, I love you so much. Like, apparently not. Don't tell him that right after you shot him down. And then he kind of like sneak neck kisses her and he's like, yeah, I love you too. But they both meant it way differently. And she's kind of tearing up. She says she's worried that she's making the same mistake she always has, but she has to believe this is different and this will be the relationship that works for her. Dan's like, well, if things don't work out the way she plans, he's still going to be there for her. So I think he's hoping that it blows up in her face, she calls him crying, and then they get married and roll off into the sunset. So let me know what you guys think about this new couple. I don't think I'm going to be a fan. It's like, it reminds me of the kids in high school who used to like make fun of me. Like, why? I don't relate to these people. But, I could be wrong. This is the first 10 minutes we're seeing them. We haven't met him yet, so hopefully he's not as terrible as I think he is, but I think he's going to be. And let me know, why do you guys think that we had to wait 7 episodes to meet this couple? I think that it was weird, we didn't see Danielle and Johan for a few episodes. I feel the same things going on with before the 90 days. We're seeing less of them. I think none of these couples are working out because they're choosing people who aren't real couples. They just have the most issue. So that's my thought for the moment. All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking it out with me. If you're still here, please like and subscribe the video. I would appreciate it. Why I saved my least favorite couple for last, I'll never know. But we're going to talk about Danielle and Johan. I actually like Johan for the most part, but she makes me crazy. So Danielle tells us her friends went back to New York a few days ago. She was sad to see them go, but they offered her a new perspective on whether or not going through with the fertility process right now is the best decision. But, today they're headed to the fertility doctor. It's the same one they met a year ago. And he had told her the odds of her getting pregnant with her eggs are real low. But Johan, he wanted to continue to try naturally. But it's been 9 months and no success. So They need to think about using science and an egg donor. And I want to say that Johan was skeptical on that because he's religious and he thinks God provides you with children when they're supposed to happen. Which, I mean, some people think that. I'm not going to tell you one way or another. I just feel like that was part of why he wanted to try naturally. So they get to the doctor and he asks Danielle how she's doing. And she says that since she's seen him last, she tried really hard to balance her hormones naturally. Like, she even worried about her pH. She won't even dip in the river. She tried everything. She wanted to see if that would help. She changed her diet, and none of that helped. And so now she wants to know what choosing a donor looks like. He says they have pictures of the donors, so they'll try to find someone who resembles her. Johan asks, since it's an egg from someone else but Danielle's body, will it inherit things from her? He says, she will, for the baby, be like the vessel and the blood that runs through it and the body growing it. But genetically, it's not going to have Danielle's genes, but it'll have Johan's. Johan tells us that it does bother him that it wouldn't be Danielle's biological kid. He says there's traits of Danielle's that he would want his children to have, her eyes or her nose, but not her temperament. I think we can all agree there. The doctor's like, well, do you want a blonde donor or a brunette? Because I can't tell which one she is with all that crazy mounds of hair she's got on that head. She says she wants that she's gray, haha. And the whole time I'm thinking, well, what about medical history? Do you get to find out, if there's mental illness in the family or diabetes or whatever? I get that what she looks like matters, but so does that other stuff. Johan asked Danielle, what she would want the donor to look like. And she's more on the same page as me a little, because she's not this part. She wants it to be Harvard educated. The mother, or the egg donor, to be Harvard educated, because she has high expectations. She cares less about what she looks like and more about what she does for a living. I was more thinking health issues and stuff like that. But, not everyone's worried about the looks. The doctor says, they do the process by extracting the eggs, and on that day, they need Johan's contribution to the process and the embryo. And they will probably have 6 or 8 embryos to work with. 5 days after that, they do the transfer, and then they just wait for pregnancy. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. He's if you decide on a donor, it will start in 15 days. And I just know she's going to pull a Kenny and change her mind. They really want us to learn about this process on this channel. Then the doctor separately from them, and I don't know why he must have told this to them, but they interview the doctor and he says the rate of success is 70% at the highest, so she needs to get on it fast. Then we find out the process is $10,500, and then she has to pay the donor $1,000. And I'm just why don't the hospital pay the donor and include that in the bill? Maybe they do. I don't know. But she says she doesn't have $11,000 saved for right now, so they have to find a way to pay for it. It's yeah, we know you don't have that kind of money. Bankrupt. So, I told you. I don't know if I'm just cranky today or what. So, now that this is more real, of course she's nervous because they have fundamental differences when it comes to raising family. So they need to have the hard conversation about this and make a choice. They get to the car. Danielle asks Johan how he feels. He's excited at the idea of becoming a dad. And, Danielle says now that she knows she could be pregnant in weeks, she's freaking out. She's playing it all in her head, and they need to make sure they're on the same page first. As if Danielle will have $11,500 in a few weeks. Honestly. So, She tells him she feels like she has more questions now than she did before. He says it's expensive, and they need to talk about a decision, if they want it now, if they want to wait, and the money. And she's like, if they aren't on the same page, it doesn't matter how much money they have. So, in Johan's mind, they are on the same page. She's been trying for 9 months naturally to get pregnant. But I'm guessing she knew that that was a long shot. So she was placating him with the idea. And now that it's in her face, she's worried about these other things besides the money. When every other second of her life, all she does is tell him about money. So, of course, he's thinking that's the only obstacle. She is like, she thinks Johan wants to be a father because he wants to play and he wants all the good things that come with kids. And he's like, yeah, something like that. I mean, isn't that mostly why we all have kids? She's like, but things are difficult too. He asks her what things. She says a lot of things. She says that Johan has 12 nieces and nephews, so he knows what it takes to keep a child alive. But she doesn't think he knows what's necessary to allow the child to thrive, like what education will look like, what spiritual practice will look like. Kids need structure and boundaries. She thinks it's going to be hard for them to bridge that gap. She tells him, when he's an uncle, everything is play and fun, and he has no responsibility for the difficult things. And he's like, well, are you saying I'm not responsible? And I'm thinking, don't ask the questions you don't want the answer to, Johan. And she's saying that he doesn't have to be responsible because she sees it. He says he knows how to take care of a child. He's taking care of his 10 nephews. He's given them milk. He's taking care of them. He even cleaned booty. So he knows what it's like to care for a child. She's like, she knows that he can change a diaper. And her issue is that they don't think the same things are important. She asks him what time kids go to bed at his house. He says 9. She is not buying what he's selling. She says she has been there and there is not one kid asleep by 9. She tells him if there's a baby there, it's up till 10 or 11 or midnight. And she says the schedule is necessary for a kid to be healthy. Well, Danielle, maybe that is the schedule. When my oldest son was a baby, we stayed up till 11 or 12. And then, you know what? We woke up late. Why? Because that's what I prefer. I'm not a morning person. In fact, I constantly say, I really had a lot of kids for someone who hates mornings. But that was our schedule. I was a stay-at-home mom with him. We stayed up late. We woke up early. When he went to school, we adjusted to that. And now he goes to bed at 8. And, 9 on the weekends. The point is the kids can adapt, and they adapt to the parents and their schedule. So it's okay as long as the child is getting an adequate amount of sleep. So Johan's just like, so you don't like how my family raises the kids. And I'm like, Danielle, you had 1 kid. Try getting 12 kids, 10 of them boys, to settle down and go to sleep at 9 p.m. It's going to be hard. Imagine how much melatonin it would take. A bottle a day. He tells us, this is very offensive to him. Just because, in his country, kids are raised differently doesn't mean the way they raise kids is bad. And I agree with him. Because Danielle wanted to live in his country, didn't she? She moved there barely without even telling him. And then she's like, well, you think that if a baby's alive, then that's okay. They worry about food, diapers, basic stuff. And she's like, they need other stuff like spirituality and education and sports. I'm like, she is really worried about spirituality because this is the second time you've brought it up in 35 seconds. And is that because Johan's traditionally religious? I don't know if he's Catholic or Christian, but he follows one of them. And she doesn't want her kids to be like that. because she's not, she's spiritual. And yeah, that is something they need to be on the same page with. But I think it's because she just wants to control everything about this child and make it all her and none of Johan. You know, Johan says he knows everything a kid needs. She's just frustrated they're not understanding each other. And that scares her because, you know, how can they raise a kid if they can't communicate? She tells him it's necessary to have the same values as his wife. Like, what about as your spouse or as a couple? Or we create our own values. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who were raised by parents of different religions and it was fine. Like, I've heard several stories of people who the mom went to church and the dad stayed home, or vice versa. Things like that. So let me know what you guys thought. That's a lot of like touchy subject because no one should really be telling anyone else how to raise their kids unless it's a danger to them. And I think Danielle just thinks she's perfect. And she's perfect. Everyone else is wrong. She's never not once had to be around 12 kids. The patience that it takes to be around that many kids. Like, whew. So I bet Johan has a lot more patience than Danielle. Anyways, that was this episode. Sorry if I seem cranky. Like I said, I don't know if I'm just cranky or these people are just ridiculous. So let me know what you think. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. I'm definitely going to be getting Before the 90 Days out next. So look for that in the next couple of days. Don't forget to take deep breaths and, you know, be nice to each other and maybe give a compliment to a stranger because they would probably really like that. I hope you guys have a good day and I'll talk to you later. Bye.